I'm Andy. I'm going to teach you how to do a guitar setup for music therapists. Music therapists have some unique challenges when it comes to setting up our strings and our guitar setup because we do not function in a perfect musical world. Our guitars get thrown up on, dropped, hit, strings yanked on, and that's just in one day. So setting this up to be successful for that kind of abuse and still be something that's safe for clients and sounds good musically is a little bit of a challenge. A real setup at a shop can range anything from $80 to $200. You can do this on your own. The only tools you actually need are your hands. You want to get crazy? Get a pair of pliers. That's about it. So you can do this in your car when you're waiting for your next client. You can do it at a site. You can do this in the middle of a session, as I have done. Just change out one string at a time. Learning these skills and being comfortable with them will help you be a better professional and help you serve your people more functionally and more fluidly. There's nothing worse than going to a session and telling someone you can't do something because your equipment isn't ready, or because you don't have strings, or because you need to change things. If you need to change things, change them. So let's get to work. Here's my guitar. The first thing you want to do is strip it down. A good place to start is completely reset from the beginning. So some people change one string at a time, trying to hold on to, say, the E so you can retune it. Don't. Just stop what you're doing, spend some time, and get it right. When we do this in a hurry, it doesn't really help. It may solve the problem for a few hours because you need to get to the next gig until you can change the rest of the strings, at which point, stop and change all the strings. Don't just do one at a time and piecemeal it together. Actually spend some time, take care of your equipment because you need it and it will serve you well. If you don't, it won't serve you well, and it stands a chance of breaking in a session, not working when you need it, and all around being very frustrating and inappropriate. So, spend some time, dedicate a little bit of time to what you're doing, and put some effort into it, put some love into it, and it will make a big difference. Start with it completely stripped down. An important note that I always tell people: when you pull your tuning peg, or your pegs out of your saddle, it only goes in one place. It goes from your hand to your pocket. Every time. Don't set them down. Don't put them where you can find them. No, from here to your pocket. Every time. These are not expensive. You can buy a brand new set of these for about $4, but there is nothing like them in the world. So you cannot replace this with something on the road. If you're out working in the clinical setting and you lose one of these, you can't jam a pencil in there and get the same effect. You can't try to rig it up with a dowel rod or anything else. There is literally nothing else in the world like this. And although they're cheap and simple, you can't work without it. So literally, a $4 piece of plastic can put you dead in the water for an entire day. Depending on how much work you have in a day, this $4 piece of plastic can cost you hundreds of dollars. So, it goes from here to your pocket. If you want to spend some time taking a look and making sure they're in good condition, hold them up to the light and just look at them. Most of them are made out of plastic today. Nicer ones are made out of wood. Really nice ones are made out of bone. I've seen some made out of an epoxy resi combo. They can get as fancy as you like. Arguably, the sound quality doesn't make a difference. Plastic is cheap and it's replaceable. As they wear, you've got a big groove right here that a guitar string sits in. As that guitar string moves from being vibrated, it acts like a little saw because they're ridged and they're stronger than the plastic, and it saws grooves and gouges into this. It's okay to have a bunch of gouges. It can be ugly. But if you've got big chips or cracks, if it looks like the string's going to fall out of that gouge, if it in general looks ugly, you can quickly sand it with a piece of sandpaper to get it down, or just buy new ones. Again, $4. From here to here. All right, the next thing that you want to take a look at is your bridge in general. This whole object is a bridge. They come in different shapes. Some of them are a little tilted, some of them are straight rectangles, some of them are fancy. Alvarez likes to make this specific shape. There's one called a mustache bridge, which I really think it's kind of cool. But take a look at it, and again, run your finger over everything. If anything pokes you, stop. Sand it down. When I say sand it down, I actually mean go grab some sandpaper and sand it down, not just like with your nail. Like go spend some time on this. This is already finished wood, so you want to use a high grit sandpaper. Sandpaper is sold by the grit number. A small number like 60 or 80 is going to be coarse and rough, and that's going to scratch and mangle the wood and shape it, and is not what you want to use on a guitar. Higher grit, something like 100, 220, 480, it goes really high. The higher the grit number, the smoother it is, the less damage it does. So you want a high grit, something like 120 or 220, something pretty up there, so that you can run your hand comfortably about it. You should be able to take it and put it on the side of your face without grimacing. This is delicate wood, so sand it down small in that area, nice and smooth, and then if you have some wild scuff marks and something, you can keep sanding with smaller grit, or you can take nail polish, clear nail polish, nitrocellulose. You can go right over your scratches and scuffs if you've got a clear glossy coat like this, and it'll act just like the clear glossy coat, cover it right up, you'll never know it. Alright, moving up, we have the saddle. Bridge, saddle. Most people are terrified of the saddle. Few of them know what to do with it. Some people can't even identify it because we don't mess with it very much. That's fine, let's mess with it. Your saddle is not glued or screwed down or anything like that. It's just sitting in a channel. It should be able to just lift up. You might have to rock and wiggle it, but if you find yourself fighting or using a pair of pliers or wanting to, go ahead and stop. Don't. As you can see, this is pretty thin. Most of them are made out of plastic and resin composite now. Some of them are bone. This is a plastic one. I'll show you a bone one later. They are very brittle. They do not bend. So if you're fighting this thing, you're gonna break it. Not much, 12 bucks, maybe 20 bucks for a fancy one. But again, nothing like this can be rigged up. If you break your saddle, you are down for the day. And a $12 piece of plastic will stop what you're doing for an entire day or more, because you can't find a lot of these. You can find pegs almost at any guitar shop. They don't all carry saddles, and they usually don't carry saddles that fit your guitar because the saddle is actually very specific to your guitar, or at least to the brand of it. So you could be a week or two out waiting on something like this, and it's just $12 can stop it. So be careful with that. But it should be able to come up. Once it comes up, take a look at it. You're going to find that because we're music therapists, there's probably gunk in here. There's probably goo of wherever you've been that's gotten down in here. Clean it. All you gotta do, soap and water. Nothing fancy, just scrub it down. This is an example of an extremely worn down bridge, saddle. You can see these giant gouges in it. That is not a good thing. Alright, this is one of my, I've been working on this one for a couple years. I made it myself. It's only been used once or twice. You can tell these big gouges have been worn in from the strings. If you look at a new bridge, or a good bridge, there's almost nothing there. There's a tiny little line just to kind of suggest to the strings where to go. It's not worn down, it's not ugly, it's all one color. This is a great bridge. This needs to be replaced. Sorry, this is a great saddle. This needs to be replaced. I don't have one, so I'm not replacing it today. You can use a file and sand these smooth. Get the big burrs that come up out of it, but don't sand down deeper. and there's a ridge line. Two angles meet to make a ridge where the string sits. Don't move the ridge. When you move the ridge, you change the intonation. It makes it really, really hard to tune, because then the length of the string is no longer what it was set at. This is part of a guitar setup. Once you have it all dialed in, you come back and then you can readjust the saddle to make almost a 1/16 or an 1/8 of a cent change in tuning. That's very small, but it's also very frustrating. If your saddle is out of whack, it's really hard to get in tune. Once you've cleaned it and it's happy, check your saddle groove. I've got a pickup in mine. That's that fancy red thing. Pickups, our under saddle pickups, are just a little ribbon. Don't mess with them. Just, if you've got one, leave it alone. As long as it's working, just leave it alone. They can be very finicky. They're extremely delicate. One thing that we're checking for is dirty. Did someone puke in here? Did you get lemonade in here? Did you get fill in the blank? If you've got gunk in here, you can reach in the sound hole carefully, come up to the wires underneath, push that wire gently up, and this will pop up. The key is gentle. Once it's up, gently nudge it out of place. Clean away. Make sure it's totally dry. Let it air dry for another 5 minutes, even after you're sure it's dry, and then put it back in. You may, depending if it's a used guitar and you don't know what's going on with it, you'll notice I have paper in mine. This is kind of a frowned upon trick, but it helps slightly level the saddle pickup so that it picks up the tone of the strings evenly, or the way that I want. You can use other things like bone shims. I happen to have paper. Paper is not the best conductive sound source, but you may notice that there's paper in there. Leave it alone. Unless you're going to do a full proper setup, just leave it alone. Don't get it wet. When you're ready, gently nudge it back in place. Put your saddle back. Which way does my saddle go? Real question. You can look at multiple saddles. It's really hard to tell sometimes. They go like this, they go like that. You'll notice that it's not even. None of these are in a normal position. The one that kind of gives it away on all instruments is the B string. E, A, D, G, B, E. The B string is just a weird part of construction in a guitar. They had to do a lot of stuff to make it work. Get into the physics of a guitar later. But you'll notice in every saddle, the B string is weird. It's either shifted back or to the side, but it's not in line with the others. These are all make a nice pretty line, and then that B string's way out of whack. If you see one of them that's way out of whack, that's your B string. Line it up with your B string. That's the position of your saddle. Put it in gently and snugly. Don't rock it, don't bump it, just push it in. Moving up the guitar, now we have the neck. There's a couple things you're looking for on the neck. One, is it filthy? Clean it. This is the thing. Our guitars get filthy. Everywhere your hands have been, this fretboard has been. Okay? Your hands are dirty, you're just grinding it into this thing. This is gross. Clean it. Soap and water is a good way to start. Get a sponge with just the scruffy side and just soap and water it. Ta-da! While you're cleaning it, take a look at it. Do you have anything like a crack, a chip? Is it separating somewhere? What's the general health and wellness of this piece of wood. A neck is made out of two parts. One, the wood underneath it, and two, the flat piece that goes right on top of it. They are only joined by glue. So you can get a crack here. You can get a twist or a warp or a crack or all sorts of very unfortunate things. That's something to notice and deal with immediately. If you have a crack in your neck, stop what you're doing. Go take it to a shop. You're putting like 80 to 110 pounds of pressure on this thing. If there's a crack in there, you're putting 80 to 110 pounds of pressure on that crack. It's cracking because it's not working. Take it in, it's gonna fail. Disinfectant wipe, because this goes everywhere you go, and it's gross. Spend some extra time scrubbing down your frets so they're extra clean and shiny for the next part. If you have something like fret oil, now's the time to put it on. I don't use it because I don't really need to. I end up changing my strings quite often. Cleaning it and keeping it moist seems to work out for me. If you've got an older guitar or a nicer guitar or a guitar that's got a different type of fret wood here, use what's appropriate for it. Once it's clean, it's time to take a look at the frets. Taking a look at the frets, you'll find that they are worn down. This is a great example of a guitar that needs to have its frets redressed. As those strings move, they act like little saws. They cut into anything, including metal. This has had years on it. You can notice that up here, these frets are in great shape because I don't play up on 18th and 22nd position very much. Almost no action happens up here. Everything is really worn down here and in 5th position where I play a lot. If you've got big gouges, if you can take your thumbnail and run it along here and it hits these gouges and stops like this one does, it's time to get your frets redressed. Redressing is something you can do. It's something that a lot of shops will do for you, and I would suggest practicing. Go to the pawn shop and buy a $50 junk guitar, a flat block of wood, and some sandpaper. Go online and watch some videos and tutorials on how to redress frets and practice. In general, it involves sanding all of these down evenly with a very flat block. You have to do it perfectly even, that way they all go together. You sand down to the lowest point, that way they're nice and smooth. You readjust the truss rod on the neck, bringing it up, and then you've got basically brand new frets. You can only do that 1 or 2 times until you've gone too far, and you have to rip these out and put new frets in. That is something I would suggest taking to a shop and not learning online, unless you have a number of guitars to practice on and you've done that before. That's how I learned. I practiced on a bunch of guitars that I broke, but you will break them. Alright, next we have the head. Connecting the neck to the head is a nut. It acts and is very similar to your saddle, which is on the other side. This is our nut. It's got 6 little grooves, each one by different thickness. You could probably guess by the string gauges how that lines up. We've got E, A, D, G, B, E. This wears down just the same as your saddle and just the same as your frets do. So take a look at it. Do you have gunk in it? That's very, very, very common. We get stuff in this all the time. Scrape it out. You can use a small file. You can take a piece of sandpaper, fold it in half, slide it through. I would just urge you to be careful and gentle when doing so. Always use something smaller than the hole. So if you're feeling crazy and you want to take your E string because it's grippy and use it like a file to clean that out, that's okay for your E string, but do not use it for any of the others. In doing so, you will widen that gap and basically just ruin the nut. Again, about an $8 piece, but nothing works like it. So So if that goes, you're dead in the water. Move your strap or anything you've got here. Check to make sure no cracks. This isn't pulling up. Everything is happy. Again, clean and disinfect. Always good to note, check your strap. Sometimes these things start to fray, they tear, we don't realize it, we sling our guitar over our shoulder, it snaps, and we drop our guitar. It's a piece of shoestring, but it can, blow your whole guitar, so at least stop and check it. I'm using a neck lift. There's a number of different types of them. I like it. It holds the neck up off the ground when I'm working on it. The other option is you lay it flat and this head pushes on the table, puts the guitar at a weird angle, and if you do any amount of leaning or pushing on this, it puts all the force right here and very easily snaps the head off. This helps. Put it on the neck, not on the head. Makes life easy. They're fairly cheap too. A pillow can work, folded up towel, anything, but just lift this part off so we're not putting pressure right here, because we are going to be messing around with this quite a bit. These are your tuning pegs, obviously 6 of them. They are relatively simple contraptions. It's a post, a nut, and a screw on the back. Wiggle them. The post should have a little wiggle. This is enough. Like a loose tooth, just a little. The nut below it should have none. This should be rock solid. There should be no wiggle, no turn, no nothing. That should be solid. If you do have some, like this, fix it. Fix it now. What this does is it holds a cuff in place that keeps this post from tilting. If it tilts, it puts the tension weird. You start putting stress on the guitar where it's not meant to. You get things that broken headstocks, strings that can't stay in tune, strings that break, your general nightmares. So if this part is moving, tighten it by hand. Get a pair of pliers. I use a socket usually, but I've got these. And very slowly, gently, and lovingly tighten that bad boy down. If you think you're getting it tight enough that you're going to damage the wood, you're probably wrong. But at that point, go ahead and stop. I mean, you don't have to crank these down like crazy people. Just get it tight enough so it doesn't really move. Okay? You want to make sure that this post turns. All of them move freely. If you've got one that's not turning, it's really stiff, or if you're tired of fighting this because it's too tight, there's a screw at the end of each one of these, a little tiny Phillips head screw. You can get a tiny screwdriver. It's my tiny screwdriver. Or like a normal one, because they're pretty normal. You get in here and you just tighten or loosen. Usually people have this too tight, so you gotta want to loosen it a little. I'm pretty picky about how I like mine, so I generally adjust them each time. This, I think, is too loose, because when my kids come by and bump it, or clients start to grab at it, it moves. I don't like that because my clients grab this stuff all the time. So for music therapy, I generally make these pretty tight, just to keep them from moving. Some people really hate that because it makes it harder to tune. I don't know about that, but if it works for them, whatever. For me, I like them fairly firm. Get it all clean. Remember, disinfect this as well, and then set it at kind of at 0 here. So set it at 0, I'm meaning there's a hole in each of these posts, right there. You want that to be vertical. Set them all that way. And then I just keep my tuning peg handles vertical, that way I've got room to get in here because I have big fingers. Okay? Now you can't get it out. There you go. All right. Clean, disinfect everything. Soap and water, scrub it, love it. Guitar is cleaned up and ready and set to 0. We can start actually looking at strings. Let's talk strings. I only buy Lexor. They don't sponsor me, but they have good stuff and it's the only thing I buy. Otherwise, I end up fighting it. Strings break, I don't like them, they don't work. These always work, they always have. It's been decades, I only buy these. When you find something you love, just go with it. One thing I would strongly suggest for music therapy, get like medium light or like a light HD, something with a much thicker gauge and something that's coated. Lexor uses Polycoat NanoWeb or something like that. Other brands use different names. They're coated in something. Coated strings stay cleaner longer, they don't rust, they tend to work out a lot better, and they don't generally break as much. They cost a little more, but you should be paying at least $15 for strings. If you're buying a $5 pack of strings, don't. They're only going to work for a little while. They stand a real chance of breaking. The worst thing you can do is encourage a client to finally reach out and play with you just to have the string break, cut their hand, and punish them. That's the worst thing you can do, and you did it because you bought $5 strings. Don't buy $5 strings. Buy decent strings. Get something big. I like bright sounding strings. They're all described a little differently. Find what you like. If you have a nylon classical guitar, you're going to need something that's low tension. Do not buy folk strings. They make something called folk strings or folk acoustic. They're a hybrid between steel and nylon. They do not work for music therapy. They will be gone and off your guitar in a handful of days. Buy actual nylon strings and change them often. Otherwise, if you've got a steel string guitar, buy something thick. Don't go more than medium. Medium's got a lot of tension. That's as hard more as you want to go. Light HD is what I use. You can go a little smaller, get a light medium. But you're looking for something where I think your largest gauge, you want to be about a 52 or a 53 or less. Don't go much more than that. So I'm going to put the biggest strings possible on this and hope that they last the longest because they take the most abuse and they sound the best the longest. When you open this up, take a look at your box before you destroy it. Some boxes have a string guide on the back that tells you what gauge is what string. Some have no information, like this one. They just happen to be in order. If you drop this, and they're all out of order now, and you have no idea what strings goes where, relax. It's okay. They go in order. Every pack has a gauge number. Each string is labeled. Some of them will wrap 2 strings in a package, but there will be vastly different. It'll be like the high E and the low E. You'll be able to tell a difference. They go in order. 13, 17, 25. Counting is difficult. I can't help you. Boom. Now they're back in order. All you gotta do is just take a look, calm down. You don't need the string chart, just go by size. I like to start with the biggest one because it's the closest to me. If you're completely lost at this point and you don't know which side is the high E string and which side is the low E string, stop and do some basic problem solving. You're okay. One, how do you hold the guitar? Hold it with this, left hand on the neck, right? Low E string is on the top here. Where's your pick guard? You're strumming down. That kind of gives you an idea of orientation. And if you're really lost at that point, you could look at the saddle, which one of these is out of whack, that's your B string. Most people don't get that confused, but I've had to change these upside down in the backseat of a car before, and it gets a little disorienting. So stop and think about what you're doing. Think about holding the guitar and get yourself in position. All strings come wrapped up like this. A good note when you take them off, wrap them back up in the same manner. These are sharp. The small strings here, the tips of them are smaller than some needles that you would use at a hospital. If you clip these or you leave them on the ground, you'll find them with your feet. And if you don't like kicking needles, wrap these up and take care of them. Don't leave them on the ground. To get them unwound, just hold on to it, find the part that sticks out, just unwind it a little. Ta-da! Nothing to it. You've got a ball end and you've got a straight end. On a nylon guitar with nylon strings, they're both going to be straight. It does not matter which end on a nylon. On this one, obviously it does. You're going to take your ball end and a tuning peg, or sorry, a bridge peg. I'm picky about which one because I'm a nerd. And you're going to line it up so that the groove in the peg fits with that string. Like that. I only give myself about that much hanging over the edge. That's not a lot. If you do one of these, you must pull that string all the way through once it's set. If you don't want to do that, don't do it. Just give yourself what you want. I only need a little bit there. Take the whole contraption, stick it in the hole. You can hold it together and jam it in, or you can take the kind of the two-sided approach here, where you rest the ball peg over the hole, and then you push it down with the peg. The trick, all you gotta do is just make sure it stays in that groove. As you push it down, you're in. You don't want to fight or wiggle or push it, just straight down. If it's not going, more than likely the winds at the end are too thick. Push it down a little further until you get to a thinner part of the string and push down. Once you're in, take your thumb, put it on this peg, push firmly, and give a real quick tug, tug, tug. What that's going to do is it's going to pull that string up and seat it right against this peg. That way there's no loose tension in there and it doesn't come off later. Take your string all the way back down. Find your peg. If you're lost, let's play a little game. Where's it go? You could go to any of these, right? Well, not really. If this is the slot on your nut where this string is supposed to go, put it there. Take your finger, hold it there, and then just let go. More than likely, if your guitar is built well, it's going to literally touch the correct peg. If you've got it over here, you're going to see that it touches this one. Touches that one. Generally, it's this first one that people get confused on. It's right here. You never, never, never want strings to cross. If I'm here and the next one goes there or something crazy like that, start, whoa, way wrong. Just stop. They all need to go straight. They all need to be level. Just put it where it goes and it'll literally just touch the right peg. This is your E, A, D, G, B, E. Take it, stick it through your hole. I use my hand as a gauge because it's the size I know. Some people use a ruler because they like to be precise. I'm not that person. I find my 12th fret, I take my whole hand, and I do like that. That's how much I leave for winding. This is where we differ in classic guitar setups and music therapy guitar setups. In music therapy, we want this to be as strong as possible. This is going to get pulled on. This will get dropped. This is going to have an egg shaker used as a guitar pick. The tension is going to be insane. And then it's going to be freezing cold in your trunk. And then this is going to the worst situation possible for guitars. So when I wrap these and I set up the tension, I set it up so that they are as strong as possible, not as pretty as possible. There are lots of different methods and lots of different opinions and approaches for how to wrap and set this tension. Learn those, find one you love, that's great. I do it like it's going into wartime. So I leave this much room, I come up here, and I just give a 90-degree turn. I turned the string around the peg, I didn't move the peg. What that does is it bends the string. When I pull back against it, it generally holds it in place. Not a lot, but it helps keep things where I want. Now I've set this distance so I don't really lose it. Otherwise I have to hold my hand here the whole time and that's not going to work. Now I can take my hand away, come down here to the nut, and what I'm doing is I'm taking my hand and I'm pulling against that at a marker and setting it in the nut. I'm putting my thumb here to put a little pressure on here. A little pressure. The amount of pressure it takes to pull off a sticky note. Not a lot of pressure. If you put a lot of pressure on here, as you tune or as you tighten these, you are literally sawing through the nut. You don't want to do that because then we're starting over. Okay? So I'm going to lightly hold this in place. I'm going to turn this bad boy. Which way do I turn? This is an important question for a lot of folks. And it's one of the things that I see wrong on many guitars. I applaud you for doing the strings yourself. I really think it's good that you tried. This is where almost everyone screws up. Common mistake. They all go away. The string goes in and away. You do not ever want it to go in because then you're wrapping to the outside of the post. You want to wrap to the inside of the post. Why is that important? It's important because it keeps this string straight, which keeps the tension on this nut exactly where it should be. If you wrap to the outside, it puts the tension at a 45-degree angle and easily cracks the nut. Saws out wide gouges when you tune. Sometimes they hit other strings when they tune. The whole thing just is a nightmare. So, don't. Alright, as we go along, the second thing I see, and one of the big things I find for music therapy, is called the sandwich wrap. You can just blindly twist. This thing will wrap around a post. Yay. But what's going to keep this from pulling out of tune when someone yanks on it is having this wrapped around it appropriately so that it squeezes down on your actual your string here and it can't let go. You want the tension to pull and, much like a bowline knot, get tighter as you pull. Okay, so we're going to make a sandwich knot, which means this string is going to go on top of this pokey outy bit. If this pokey outy bit slips, then you go wildly out of tune. And it goes out of tune in a weird place, which means you have to unwrap the entire string, re-put it in. It's kind of a nightmare. So we're going to go on top. On top means as I'm coming under here, I have gone literally on top of that string. And then as it comes around, on bottom. And as it comes around, you should be able to see a nice little sandwich. String on top, pokey bit in the middle, string on bottom. That little sandwich knot will hold this thing in tune. Keep it from slipping. With that, you don't need a lot of wraps. You only need 2 or 3, maybe 2. The reason behind it is that it pulls it in and keeps the pressure. You want as few wraps as possible because that puts as little tension at the bottom as you want. You don't want as a lot of force and tension at the bottom of this peg. It's not meant for that. That's how you start pushing against the cuff. That's when things start getting weird and these pegs start shifting and moving. keep them up, keep the tension up higher, then it uses the whole strength of the entire assembly to hold that string in place, which generally works a lot better. Thing to note, how hard am I holding this string? If I let go, this thing goes wild, right? So I'm holding this string, but I'm not touching the nut. I'm holding it up. In doing that, I can hold this and pull back against this as hard as I want, which makes it easy to wrap. If I've got it down like this, and I pull back, then all you do is saw a hole right through your nut, a gouge into your fretboard, and make a giant dip in your fret. It's just done all three things you don't want to do. So I use my finger, just kind of make a little bridge, I pull up against it, and away we go. Tighten it until it starts to squash your fingers. Then move your fingers. Again, not a lot hard there, but I'm keeping it up. Again, see, I've got a gap here. I'm forcing it to stay up until it naturally draws itself down flat. Take a pair of pliers or your hands. I usually just use my hands, but pliers are pretty. Give yourself a tug and pull what's left of this nice and tight. Don't pull it at an angle, pull it straight. All right, once you've got it roughly set, check the tension. Does it feel like an E string? Okay, you've played this thing before. You should have at least a basic idea of how hard this string should be to move. If it is rock solid and it doesn't feel right, you are correct. It is not right. It shouldn't be rock solid. You should be able to bounce a little. There should be some action here, action meaning the heights between the bottom of the string and the top of the fret. There should be some give. This is fine. Don't tune it yet, just get it close. Come back over here, check, has your peg moved? We put it in correctly, so no, it didn't move. If you didn't put it in correctly, you're gonna hear it pop and creak and lift. As you're tightening this, you can just reach back, push your thumb, and push it back down. It'll find itself after a while, but that's pretty common. Next thing, double check your saddle. Is this in a groove, or has it gone wild? You know, sometimes they slide. Well, that one's in already. Let me loosen a little bit. All right. Sometimes they slide out, and they're sitting like that. Just push them back in, then tighten it. It's probably like a D anyways. As you can see, I've only got 2 real wraps of string underneath the post, and I'm pretty much close to a D or an E. I'm getting kind of close to in tune. That keeps my string relatively level. There's going to be an angle here. Okay, you want to follow the angle of the headstock if you can. In general, that's a little angle, not a big one. If you wrap this all the way to the bottom of the post, this elevation goes down at a sharp angle. It grinds against your nut. It lifts up on this end of the nut. It puts the tension weird on the neck, and it puts a lot more stress on the peg and on the joint than you need. I like to wrap less, keep it high, and keep the angle straight and shallow. So, now you repeat that same process for all the other strings. There we go. Yeah. There's not a space right there.
Those are going to be back to the way.
Under. Over. That's it. Big one. Check your peg. The bottom doesn't go down. Put these a little bit, and again, they're going close. There's a restriction between this. You don't over the layer. You put it close, you find your strings. Remember that. You just later, you find it that one. And then also, keep you accidentally putting other wires here. I've done that as well. Sorry. It's not just open place.
Yeah.
It's pretty. I changed right in the little with back metro. I changed broken flame. I keep going. And do I was trying to pull them out. I'm trying to get them. I play the love center. Let change like these all the same time. Alright, panic moment. You ready? Most people panic here.
What way do you turn it?
Exactly. What way do you turn it? The real question. Which one do I go to? Do I go back down here? No. Just put it where it goes. The string will touch the right peg. This one goes out. Always go away. Go away. Push it away. If you wrap it to the other direction, you wrap it inside the post, you'll hit this one, you'll carve into the nut. Don't do any of that. Just, if you get confused, look at your other one. Which way did you go here? Right about now, you should be realizing whether you've done this generally right or not. If you've got some of these with like a bunch of wrapping, and they're set it really low, and some with very little wrapping and set very high, the angle here is going to be all wonky. Now this one's going to be low, that one's going to be high. They should be the same. That's what we want for music therapy. We want this to be as gentle and in line as possible. I keep saying about watching for the tension and all this stuff. That's because we abuse guitars. You want them to last, you got to be careful with them. How'd you got for it? Just like something that's out. Pull that string up. Pull shift.
Is that person the other way?
Yeah, that's okay. How do I do that? Okay. It's not now. Let it break.
Oh, same budget.
Okay. Take substitute for a picture.
Sorry. That's actually the hardest.
Roll.
Yeah, I agree. Spooky.
Yeah, would you like this?
Same down.
Yeah, I did once already. I don't know if you got that one after you tried the time thing question. Not that bad. Hey, no, 50 bucks material and stuff.
There's one out.
Honestly.
Right, yeah.
Don't worry, just hammer in, let them first everything glue. All that stuff off the
Here?
Yeah, so you got it out, make a little gap for it. And then put these. Oh my gosh. And put this for a while. Round it, let me after floor. And then the wire for a T-shaped. And put the tail T and hole and a hammer. The hammer top, got the smusher down. And use that to jam into the wood, hold stuff placing, the other 945. That's how it works through. Reality is a lot there. So all I can do is do is grab a hole, put glue in there, slide these big, ugly pieces of metal in, and combine to sand down. It works. We're about to see if you perfectly. There's one big mess. No, not a wrong way to do it.
It's a piece, right?
Yeah.
Wait, are you the right piece on it?
Yeah, that's actually. And some people go in and do, some people don't, they say it's attached. They say the first month, it's attached to the materials.
People give them
That's it.
pretty soon.
Okay, so now we've got our strings on, things starting to look like a guitar again. How do we get this ready for tuning and ready to go? Double check. You've got your strap where you want it, it's nice and flat. The knot is not pushing up against any of these. This should be able to move freely. Run your finger along these strings. Are they even? Do they do this or are they flat? If they're flat, you've done well. If they're wonky, take the time and fix it. Take a look at your wraps. Do you have a sandwich wrap on each of these? Are they wound without crossing each other? Are they all going the correct direction? Are they all winding down? Some of these little ones, they get a little wild. Okay, if you're happy, leave them big still. Don't cut them till the end. Come down to this side. Is everything in a groove? It is now. Are all of your pegs down, not moving? They don't have to be perfectly level. Okay, these ones get a little wonky. This is not even the right peg for the set. Okay, are they down and not moving? Okay, you should be able to put your hand firmly on the strings at this point and not feel any major differences. They should hold you up without one side caving in or doing one of these. Okay, Come to your sound hole. This is where we hit the thing, remember? Hit it. Does it hold up? If in hitting it, we're losing the pegs, things are moving, something's wrong, go ahead and address it now. You may just have to take off the string and reset it. Okay? But beat it up now, because it's better to do it now when you have a chance on the table than when you're in a session. Start with your E string. This is roughly an E. It's not like perfect, but it's pretty close. These strings, and nylon strings especially, will need to stretch. These steel strings, Lexors, take about, I want to say 24 hours to really hit their stride. The next 6 hours are going to be really rough on this guitar. It will not keep intonation. You'll tune it, and then 5 minutes later it'll be wrong. So, don't worry, it's roughly an E. Take your finger, push a little, not a lot. We're just stretching that string a bit. You are not putting a lot of weight here because we just work so hard to get the tension of this perfectly parallel without anything going in weird directions. Let's not, do the opposite. Just push and bend a little. We're going to stretch these strings. The higher strings are going to bend a little easier. Okay. To tune on a table, if you have any steel lap guitar playing experience, this is when it comes in handy. If you don't, that's fine. I should have picked that one up. These are sharp. Now I'm bleeding. Like I said, they're sharper than needles, right? Alright, so find your 5th fret. Often it's marked by a pretty circle, a dot, or a decoration or something. You should be able to find 5th fret. We do tune off this all the time. To play on a table, you pluck down like you're falling off the edge instead of up and down like this. You want to kind of get more of a down stroke to it. I don't know, that's how it is. Take your finger, go. There's our 5th fret. Another good way to tune when it's on the table, you don't have to strum. You can just tap on that fret and it'll give you the tone. So here's our tone. We want this string to roughly match. Got a wild one there. Got a mile to go there. Tune slow. Don't just crank on this thing. I have not used a string winder. You should not use a string winder. String winders they encourage you to put way too many wraps on it. They're not necessary, and they make you tune way too fast. These are not meant to go quickly. Don't use a tune winder. Just turn the thing. It's not that many turns. You're going to be fine. Still okay. It's just moving that string up the peg. Popping and crackling is fine. Horribly out of tune guitar. Give it about 10 minutes, tune it again, give it about 2 hours, tune it again, give it about 6 hours, tune it again. In about 24 hours it's going to be good to go. Come back, clip your wires nice and short. Make sure you get only the wires you want, not the pretty ones you just put on. That way people like me don't stick themselves with it. Check the back of your strap. That's not going to go, is it? Check the back of your strap to make sure it's in good shape. If you've got a pickup on your guitar, then that means you've got an in jack somewhere. My in jack is my button strap. Many of them are like that. Twist it, feel it, make sure that it's not loose. If it is, tighten it. If it's really wild, you're tightening it and it just won't tighten or you can't turn it, basically you're going to want to strip all this off, shove your hand all the way down, up inside it to here, get a hold of the nut that's on the other side, and then tighten it. If you're having to do that, when you're doing it, use a locking nut and some super glue anyways. If you're going to be fighting that much work to get to it, go ahead and super glue it. That way you only have to do it once. Take your strap, get it where you're happy. Now is the time to deal with all those insane twists and knots that people put in them. Mine can't twist on purpose. Get it flat the direction you want. Once it's on, pull against it to make sure it's not coming off. And you're done. Strings have changed.